what is life balance? And you know, people, and I love that Bobby showed, you know, balance, and he showed, well, his teeter-totter didn't move, but he showed a teeter-totter, and that's the first thing you think about. People talk about life balance. You got work here, and you got life here. Well, work is part of life. And then I started thinking balance is a little more like the one in the middle. You got a whole bunch of different things you're trying to think of, but that's really static. The better analogy, I think, for balance is the one on the bottom. Balance in life is dynamic. Things are constantly changing. There are going to be periods of your time where work is important. There are going to be periods of your time where your family is important. There's going to be periods of time where just being alone yourself and reading a book is going to be important. So it's a dynamic thing. It's constantly changing. So you can't think of balance as a static teeter-totter. So what are we trying to balance? Well, we're trying to balance career. We have a career. We got to work, at least I do. We do have, most of us have family, and we have to look at that. We have to look at recreation and personal interests. What makes you you when you're not in the hospital? You've got to have time for those things, and you got to have time for your health. So, why is there conflict with work and the balance of all the rest of these things? Well, we all work hard. Face it, you chose a job where you're going to put in a lot of hours. There's no other way around that. And throughout our training, we were rewarded for how hard we worked. Think back to residency. Who were the good guys in residency? The good guys in residency were the guys who were working as hard or harder than you were, that never sloughed anything on you. We rewarded hard work, and we prided ourselves in how hard we worked. There is always more work to be done than you can do. So there's an endless supply of stuff you can do at work, and you've got to worry about that. And the bottom line is, if you're like most of us, you do this because you love doing it. I love going to work. I enjoy working. I'm sorry to admit that, but it's true. So, why is life balance important? Okay, I figured I had to at least do something in PubMed so that you'd think this was an academic talk. So I just put in work-life balance physician. You get 194 references. A lot of it's garbage, but if you actually read through it, people have looked at this, and they've shown that physicians who identify themselves as suffering from burnout cost more, have poorer outcomes, and if you talk to medical students, one of the prime drivers now in medical students is they're looking at lifestyle balance. So if we're going to recruit and convince the next generation of medical students to look after us when we need our knees replaced, where's Dale? Dale, thanks for my dad. We have to encourage these people to go into this specialty, so we've got to show them that you can achieve life balance. So, why is achieving life balance important, really? Again, there isn't enough time in the day to do everything you want to and need to do, so we're constantly making trade-offs. And these trade-offs that we make affect others. They affect our partners, they affect our family, they affect our patients. And so there's a lot of things involved in it, and primarily we have to look after ourselves. So, just quickly, signs you might not have achieved balance in your life. Number one, short temper. Any of you who were at the General in, say, 2002, I kind of could occasionally be volcanic. That was a bad thing. You feel stressed. You feel you're at your wit's end. You don't know what's going on. The hi daddy. That was what my 2-year-old daughter called a telephone when she learned how to talk. Give me a minute. Sorry. Cute until you realize what it meant. And finally, doing things because you have to do them, not because you want to do them. Those are bad signs. So again, I was really happy to hear Bobby's talk because he says we're all about stories. So I thought that I would go on, now that I gave I gave you the PubMed talk, I'm going to go on and talk a little bit about my journey to something resembling balance. Not sure I'm there yet, but I'm working on it. So first off, residency. I was fortunate enough to have my two older children were born while I was a resident. And any of you who have young children know that young children have the ability to demand 100% of your attention. So you have to get rid of work for a while because the kids demand it. And this is the first point in my life where I started realizing that I had to think about balance. And I did things like dedicating time out of every day that was just spent with the kids. Having done my exams in Toronto, the Toronto study groups are legendary. Peter Evans and I, Peter is actually now one of my partners at Cleveland Clinic, we were the only two with kids. And our study partners were like, well, what do you mean you can't come and do practice orals? We're going to spend time with our kids. So that was sort of the first time I started thinking about balance. Then there was the Hamilton years, which I loved. And this was a phenomenal place to start my career. I was given a lot of opportunities very early. I was busy right out of the gun. I was doing very complex cases. I had the ability to develop into the surgeon I became very quickly, and I have absolutely no regrets about it. But I started picking up extra responsibilities. So I started helping out with the resident teaching sessions, which took up a little bit of time. Then I became the site chief at the General and the site chief of orthopedics at the General, and then I started going to meetings. And then I started having to deal with resource shortages from a different level. First, I was dealing with them just because, well, you're pissing me off that I can't get a bed. Now I'm the guy that everybody else is being angry at because I'm having to close their room because we're short an anesthesiologist. So what happened to me was I got spread too thin too fast. And it took me too long to realize that. And so one of the things that was, my wife used to grab the new, when the JBJS came out, she would grab the JBJS and take Post-it notes and stick them on the academic jobs. Sorry. Okay. So, thank you. So what happens is I decided I needed a break. I needed to get out for a number of reasons. And so if you're at this point where you think you need a change, it helps to have a little bit of a rational plan. First off, try and see if you can change things where you are, and maybe you can make things work. And I tried, but didn't quite work. But then what you got to do is you got to think about what is it you love about what you're doing? What makes you the surgeon person you are? And then you got to look at what is it about the place you're at that you don't like? What is it you don't want? And then what you got to do is look for an opportunity that maximizes the things you like and minimizes the things you don't like. And when I actually started the process of looking, I didn't look where I ended up. I was actually very close to signing a job in Calgary. And connections are interesting because I was close to signing for a job in Calgary, and Paul Salo was chatting with Izzy Lieberman, who used to be in Toronto, who was at Cleveland, said, hey, Doug's coming to join us. And that night, Izzy called me. And that's how I ended up in Cleveland, because of a random conversation that Paul Salo and Izzy Lieberman had. So I left and I went to the Cleveland Clinic. This is not an up-to-date picture. This picture is a year old. This is our main campus. There are now 3 active construction sites, building new buildings on that site. We are the largest employer in the state of Ohio, other than the state itself. We have 10 hospitals in the Cleveland Clinic area, 14 family health centers. We're now up over 1,600 physicians and 30,000 employees. So large center with an amazing set of resources, an international reputation, obviously, but a real focus in education, which is something I've always really liked doing. I like teaching, And so one of the cool things for me with this job is I suddenly got the opportunity to travel, which is an amazing thing to be able to do. And in the past 10 years, I have taught spine surgery in 19 different countries, which has been really fun. And it's interesting, I can tell you that if you had this meeting at the Pakistani Neurosurgical Society, they would all have the same issues about work-life balance as we do. It's universal across our profession. And I fell back into administration again. A little more balanced role. I'm the chief of surgery at a small community hospital as well as working at the main campus. And the only meetings I have to go to, 2 out of the 3 meetings I have to go to every month, I run. So they always end on time because I decide when they're going to end. So that's sort of, and then things were going great. And anybody know what this is called? That's called a widowmaker. That is my LAD, left anterior descending artery. It's supposed to be there. That's what it looked like a few seconds later. Fortunately, I have no long-term effects of that. I came through it, but that's what they call a life-changing event. You start thinking about things again in terms of how are you doing with work-life balance. And I thought actually, when I looked at it, I was doing pretty good, but it did change a few things. So about 2 years ago, I was one of 2 candidates to become the president of the hospital that I work at, that I do a lot of my work at. And you know, all my career, it's been, okay, you've done this, you've moved into this job, and the ladder. In academics, we're all talking about the ladder, and some people ascend the ladder to its heights. We have 2 of them here. More power to you. But in this process, the president of regional hospitals for the system told me to go home and think about what is it you love about the job you have, what is it you love about your work now, and what is it about this new job that you think you're going to like, and what do you think the problems are going to be? And I went, you know what? I love seeing patients and operating. You know what I hate about my job? Going to meetings. This new job was going to be seeing fewer patients, doing less operating, and more meetings. So I stepped off the career ladder. And I think it's the best thing I could have done. So I realized I'm a clinician educator, I'm not an administrator. And just 6 months ago, my boss, the head of the spine program at the Cleveland Clinic, announced his retirement. I was asked if I wanted to apply. Took me a millisecond to say no. Just not what I want to do. So, from where I'm at now, how to know you maybe have balance. First off, your family's happy. Second, you like going to work. I still like getting up and going to work in the morning, more so on OR days than clinic days. But we have to take the good with the bad. You got to stay fit. You've got to stay in shape. Whatever you do in form of exercise, as long as you're doing something regularly and something you enjoy, keep doing it. You have time to do things outside of work that you want to do. Not that people tell you you have to do, not when your wife goes, we're going to see this tonight. No, things that you want to do. You got to have time for that. You don't have a lot of looming deadlines. Your inbox doesn't have 27 things in it that you were supposed to answer yesterday. And then finally, you're happy. And if you can say all those things, you probably have balance.